Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's podcast. I'm Ayush Mishra, and today we have a very special guest with us, the founder of Beacon Trusteeship Limited, Mr. Pratap Singh Nathani. Mr. Nathani has made significant strides in the corporate trusteeship industry in India over the past 8 years, establishing Beacon as a premier provider of various trusteeship services. Why? They are one of 10 active total trusteeships in all of India, and today we get a chance to not only glean insights, but delve deep into the world of debentures and trusteeships. Welcome to the show, Mr. Nathani.
Thanks, Aish. Happy to be here.
To start off, could you walk us through how you envisioned Beacon at the beginning and how it would set itself apart in the corporate trusteeship sector?
So, from the year 2008 to about 2015, I was working in a bank called ING Vysya Bank in India. We used to be interacting with a lot of trustees as I was the head of debt capital markets and loan syndication in ING. So, while doing the debt syndication and capital markets business, I came across many trustees in India, and most of them were backed by the public sector banks and a large private bank. So what I found was there was a lackadaisical approach by the trustee industry, and especially for the structured finance transactions, we found them to be responding with a delay. So that's when I thought there's a gap in the Indian trustee market, and I thought if I get a chance in life, I would love to start this business in India. That was the idea.
That sounds very impressive, Mr. Nathani. I definitely see the potential that you've identified a certain hole in the market. And you said, you know what, I'm going to plug this and I'm going to make sure that anyone who interacts with the trusteeship has all of the business proceedings done as smooth and swimmingly as possible. Now, could you tell me a bit more about Beacon's flagship service, bond and debenture trusteeship, and its importance?
So in India, the regulator is SEBI, who looks at the capital markets. And I think 20 years ago, SEBI came out with some guidelines related to debenture trusteeship in India. So essentially, when corporates started borrowing in India, they were also borrowing from loans, commercial paper, and bonds and debentures were one of the regular mediums of raising capital, debt capital in India. So that's when the new regulations came about for trusteeship. SEBI gave licenses to about 35 institutions to start a trusteeship industry. So trusteeship essentially is required as a monitoring agency to monitor the repayment of debt, timely payment of interest and principal, and security creation for the transaction. So this is more or less the idea behind the trusteeship industry.
Thank you so much for walking us through a brief history of trusteeships. And I also really like the analogy about trusteeships being a monitor of sorts, like a class monitor at school.
Exactly.
Now, another significant service is security trusteeship. How does Beacon Trusteeship manage and safeguard security interests for its clients?
So similar to a debenture trustee who oversees the bonds and debentures, there is another stream of business for loans. So when you go to raise a loan from any lender in India, they would also like a monitoring agency or a monitor to monitor their debt that they are issuing to the industry. So that is more or less to take care of the loans and monitor the loans if they are if they are paying on time, the creation of security. That is more or less what security trustee does for this transaction.
I am loving how you frame the entire financial world as like a giant classroom of sorts. And now that we come on to alternate investment funds, or what we call as a special class in a school, could you tell me a bit about the AIF trustee administration services and what kind of support do you offer for investment funds?
Sure. So AIF is more or less like the VCPE industry, venture capital and private equity. When in India, any a private equity or venture capital firm wants to raise capital, they need to go to SEBI for a license. And this is more or less the alternative investment fund industry. So SEBI will give you a license, and before that, you need to have a lawyer who will draft the documentation, make a information memorandum, make a PPM, that is a placement memorandum. You need a merchant banker to give you advice on the structure and validate the structure. And all this paperwork needs to be routed through a trustee company, which is essentially what we do under the AF category.
Now, that sounds brilliant and, well, honestly quite complex. When I think about a trustee now that you're telling me, you're essentially a giant logistics manager, managing not only so many cogs and machines, but also so many people who then grant these services. Now, I've also seen that securitization trusteeship is another key area. How does Beacon Trusteeship handle these complex transactions?
So in securitization, essentially, you don't get a license to run a securitization trustee, but it's a very large industry, so to say, in India. The volumes range from 30 lakh crore to about 50 lakh crores. Now, what is happening in the securitization industry is that what you do is you are securitizing your loan pools. By you, I mean there are a lot of NBFCs which need to raise capital. So, what they do is they would like to sell down their portfolio of loans in the securitization segment, and the buyers of these loans are banks. So, they also need a monitoring agency. So essentially, the monitoring agency is doing payouts on a month-on-month basis, giving them collection efficiency reports. In fact, what we've been able to do is create a unique software to take care of this entire logistics, the workflows, and the payouts. So we've got a special tie-up with Bank of Baroda in India, who onboarded this software as the first one, and they guided us also how to create a better software. We tweaked it according to their needs and demands. And now we've been able to onboard about 5 public sector banks and 2 NBFCs onto that software platform, which helps each one of them to give a monthly guidance on the collection reports of their loans. So that's more or less of the securitization.
The sense I'm getting, Mr. Nathani, is that not only have you filled in a very clear deficiency in the trusteeship market, but at the same time, you have created an ecosystem which fulfills all of your clients' financial needs under one umbrella. Now, another service that came to my mind was the Escrow trusteeships. Why is this service vital, and how does Beacon Trusteeship execute it?
So escrow is important from the view that there are a lot of infrastructure companies that need escrows. Banking escrows have become very important. The second sector will be focusing on the gaming sector. So there's a very unique requirement in gaming for escrows. So the largest gaming company in India, Dream 11, is our client. And in all, we do about $1 billion of transactions on the escrow side. So escrow is required when one party is moving funds to another party and they need a middleman to entrust and be entrusted with the funds. And we are allowed to move the money only under that instruction once the deal is done. So that's more or less the escrow business in India.
Mr. Nathani, I'm going to be very honest with you for a second. When I began this day, I did not think we'd discuss the word trusteeship and gaming in the same sentence. However, I'm glad to know that this is definitely part of the future and that Beacon is delving deeper, so deep into not only what is considered as traditional banking and traditional financial services, but something that caters towards the future's needs. Now, Beacon Trusteeship also manages an asset base of $150 billion, has over 1,000 clients, and has completed more than 2,500 transactions. That's quite an achievement. What do these numbers say about the company?
So when we started out in 2016, that's when we got our license in the month of February. And the first client to be onboarded was the Godrej Group. That's a very prestigious name to have on board. So over the years, we've been able to scale our operations from a very small office to today. Slowly and steadily, we've been able to grow all the operations. So the five core products they've added, each one has added about 30 to 40% of growth. So the largest mainstay in the products is the debenture trusteeship, which does about 60% of the entire revenue. The remaining four products provide equal share in each other's growth. So that's how we've been growing. And finally, we look forward to doing an IPO very soon. We'll keep you posted.
Mr. Nathani, thank you so much for that information. Seeing such big numbers definitely leaves my mind in a bit of a dizzy. It's not every day that I get to hear about not only such big numbers, but such big clients who have been long term names within Beacon. Now, within 8 years of incorporation, there's a lot that's been done. And I hear that you have a combined management experience of over 150 years. So, what future plans do you have for Beacon Trusteeship? Where do you see Beacon in the next 5 years? Maybe even the next 10 years?
So to begin with, our current building, we've got about 7 offices which are scattered all across. So we'll be moving to a new office in the Bandra Kurla complex, the Metropolitan building. After that, we've been on the road for an IPO. Very soon, we'll be getting listed. So this will be India's first trustee company to be listed on the bourses. And after that, once we raise money, we'll be opening our office in Dubai, in Singapore, and in Mauritius. So that will add a lot of revenue to our balance sheet. Also, we've been scaling up our tech operations. We want to be a tech-enabled uh, compliance trustee in India. So that's what is going on the backside.
Mr. Nathani, could I just say, this is absolutely wonderful to hear. Not only do you have such great determined plans for the future, but at the same time, I feel like we'll have the chance to shoot you in some really exotic locations all around the world. Now, before we wrap up, can you also share with our listeners where they can learn more about Beacon Trusteeship?
So what we've been doing over time is we've been trying to educate the retail investor as well as the institutional investor. So what we've been doing as a conscious effort is to provide all the regulations in simplified formats on social media as we get them from the various regulators. And we try to simplify those terms in a synopsis on a regular basis. We've been doing videos, we've been doing a lot of activity around educating the investor and how a trustee works in the interest of the investor.
That's honestly quite a lot. And that's definitely a lot of sources where your audiences can go and not only get their financial needs fulfilled, but at the same time, for novices like myself, to learn a bit more about the daunting world of trusteeships. Mr. Nathani, thank you so much for joining us today. The one thing I definitely want to say is that Beacon has all of my financial needs covered if I were to become a big corporation one day. But at the same time, you've been a wonderful person to not only answer all of my financial queries, but to also be the guiding light, might I say, a beacon in the big world of financial markets and trusteeships. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Ayush. Thanks for having me here.
And for all of us tuning in, I hope you stay safe and we look forward to hearing from you. See you soon. Bye bye. Now that you've heard from our founder, it's time to meet the A team in our next video.
So the primary objective of being a debenture trustee would be to protect the interest of the investors. Escrow is like a contractual agreement between three parties, wherein two transacting parties will appoint a third party to act as a trustee.
We give one-stop solutions to our client.
Our focus is technology.
Basically, my work is to see to it that when a transaction is happening between a borrower and a lender, it is running smoothly.
Beacon is your trusted partner, ensuring the security and efficiency of all your financial transactions.